want is right here. We gon' give them what they came for. We gon' take it up from last year. Shoot 'em a shot, boy, I'm long range. Me and the team on the same thing. Stayed down, never switched up. Only thing changed was the game. I'm in the zone now. Nothing can change what we on now. When I pull up, know it's going down. Foot on the gas, ain't no slowing down. Aiming for greatness, no settling. Kick down the doors, they won't let me in. Taking no else, yeah, I gotta win. Watch me kick down the doors, they won't let me in. Who running the game now? Foot on the gas, can slow down. No, my team, we holding it down. We know we running it now. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change.
Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mac. Tonight, our Cleveland Cavaliers took on the Toronto Raptors. And listen, if you're expecting me to go on some type of tirade, I'm just not going to do it. I don't have the energy. I'm working through a cold right now. We're getting ready to hit the holiday season. But I'll tell you what, the Cavaliers, it felt as if they were playing with house money tonight. At least that's how I took it. So many absences. That meant that there are a lot of opportunities to see the young and developing talent. And the injury report right off the bat read, no Darius, Garland, injury management, Jarrett Allen, finger obviously, DeAndre Hunter for rest purposes. Craig Porter Jr. missed his second straight game with a hamstring injury. Sam Merrill with the hand, and then Max Strus obviously did not suit up with the foot. Dean Wade was also ruled out tonight, which left Cleveland with a pretty ragtag lineup of Lonzo Ball, who I think this was his third start of the season, Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Tyson, Larry Nance Jr. at the 4, and Evan Mobley starting at the center. But as I mentioned, this left a lot of potential opportunities and minutes for the young and developing Cavaliers. Tyrese Proctor got some real burn, as did Luke Travers, and even Chris Livingston, who showed out at certain points of this game. Made his Cavaliers debut, scored his first points of the season for himself. But perhaps none more breathtaking in terms of what we got to see from the developmental guys than that of Nae'Qwan Tomlin. I was really impressed with Nae'Qwan Tomlin tonight. If there was any bright spot, and there were very few in this game, let's not mince words, he was very active tonight. Maybe most importantly from beyond the arc, at least in the first half of this game. Fresh off of knocking down his first three-pointer of the season against the Clips, Tomlin let loose and crashed home multiple first half trays, both essentially of the pull-up variety, and his confidence just appeared to be on full display, at least in the first half of this matchup. He would end the first half with 10 points on 4 or 5 from the field, including 2 of 2 from deep. Still, the Cavs would go into the half trailing 54-57 as Toronto went on a 7-0 run to take the lead back. Now, Brandon Ingram was absolutely phenomenal tonight. He was huge in getting Toronto the lead in the first half. He was very intentional and deliberate with his shot making. He was really, really solid in the half court, pulling up from mid-range, hitting mid-range fadeaways over the likes of Nae'Qwan Tomlin and others. And he was, objectively speaking, if you're a fan of basketball in that mid-range zone, he was making some really good shots tonight, some tough ones at that, against some pretty good defense, all things considered. Conversely, Donovan Mitchell was struggling with the shot, but he was drawing a lot of double and triple teams and did try to get others involved. And he was making plays in the first half as a result, finishing with 6 assists in the first half. And it felt as if there were ever a game for Spider to go back to his hero ball antics and just try and take it over. It in the second half of the game, it just felt like tonight was that game. And obviously, it was for naught. He tried. It didn't work out, obviously. There was a lot of non-existent shot making on the Cleveland tonight. Now, Toronto, for their part, kicked off the second half with a turnover, but Cleveland shot making just was not there. Way too many triples, not enough involvement from the bigs. I'll discuss Evan Mobley here in just a minute, as has been the case for a good chunk of the season. But without DeAndre Hunter, without Darius Garland, without Craig Porter Jr., 3 of the best drivers on the team and dribble penetrators on the team, this was honestly very predictable. Listen, what have I been saying? Because we'll talk about Lonzo here in a bit too. But one of the things that I've been saying about Lonzo too, It's not necessarily something that is in his game. So I didn't necessarily expect him to go out there and drive the basketball a ton. And it was pretty bad. I'll give Lonzo his own segment. It's not going to be pretty, similar to Evan Mobley. But without the services of all of those drivers and dribble penetrators, I just knew we were in for a over-reliance from three-point range tonight. This led to so much shot chucking, honestly, from the likes of just about everybody in that starting unit. Man, it was ugly as hell. Listen, Lonzo Ball took 15 shots tonight, 12 of them from beyond the arc. He made just 3 of those. Donovan Mitchell was 6 of 20. He was 3 of 12. Tyrese Proctor in 19 minutes and 32 seconds of action off the bench was 2 of 9, including 0 of 5 from three-point distance tonight. Luke Travers was 0 of 3. Chris Livingston, 0 of 2. The shot was not falling as the team shot a collective 29.2% from deep. 14 of 48. They attempted 48 triples, quickly resorting back to the over-reliance on the three-point shot. And I absolutely despised what I saw. But again, it was really predictable considering the fact that the Cavaliers outside of Donovan Mitchell just could not generate any real dribble penetration from possession to possession. Just absolutely ugly basketball to watch, honestly. Right. And from a defensive standpoint, if you're not going to make the shots, the least you can do is try and stop the other team from making a huge number of theirs. And I felt that from an individual basis, especially in the case of a Brandon Ingram, right, who shot 15 of 30 tonight, including 5 of 11 from deep, which led to 37 points overall. I thought that they made him work tonight. And I think the stat sheet is not necessarily going to tell you everything you need to know in regard to how the Cavaliers fared defensively against Ingram in particular. But I can also say there was a lot of lazy rotations, a lot of defensive miscues, and just poor defensive effort out there that led to too many open shots for Toronto. The rebounding continued to be an issue tonight, as the Cavaliers were, it just felt like they allowed way too many second chance opportunities. Toronto as a whole, they only got 7 second chance points, but it felt as if they were pulling in many rebounds that the Cavaliers probably could have gotten their hands on. And it just was pretty damn ugly. Now, Toronto, to their part, it's not like they shot extremely well from three-point distance themselves. They were 10 of 36. That's 27.8%. Which is actually worse than Cleveland, but they were able to get into the interior. They were able to get to the rim when they needed to, and they hit the shots from inside the arc, especially Brandon Ingram, who hit a good amount of mid-range pull-up jumpers over whatever defender they threw at him, whether that was Thomas Bryant, right, Donovan Mitchell. It did not matter. Nae'Qwan, Tomlin, Jalen Tyson, it didn't matter who they threw in front of Brandon Ingram tonight. He was just making shots, and sometimes you do have to tip your cap to an opponent when they're in a zone like that. And I have no problem admitting that's exactly what happened in the case of Ingram in particular. And although I felt that Tomlin, just to single him out, I thought from an individual standpoint, he did okay in terms of isolation defense. I still just think that sometimes good defense is not always going to beat better offense. And you guys know the old saying, it just sometimes when the shots are going in, they're going in. Conversely, the Cavaliers could not get that going in their favor. It was all Toronto who got the momentum shifting shots. And none of that is going to matter, obviously, if you're doing okay defensively against that, if they're making shots and you're not making your own. And that's exactly what we saw from this team for many, many stretches of this game. Now, for better or worse, they really, really were struggling until Donovan Mitchell decided to try and take his things into their own hands. And he got to the line. He made triples, right? They opened the force with a lineup of Don, Tyson, Livingston, Tomlin, and Bryant. And that's actually a lineup that I kind of liked from an energy standpoint, as they surrounded Donovan with a ton of energy. But it just felt like there was a lot of BS in this one from a shot-making standpoint. One thing that I do want to point out, Chris Livingston, who made his Cavalier debut tonight, he does have some abilities as a driver. And you guys know I continue to talk about putting pressure on the defense, somebody else outside of Donovan. I thought Chris Livingston was actually able to get some of that, but they did not get him going in that regard. If you can get him going to the basket, and they certainly did in the early stretches of the fourth quarter, as he would account for 4 points and a steal in the first 4 minutes of that frame, I think that he can probably offer you more in that category, in that regard. And then Thomas Bryant pulls up to and knocks down the tray, cutting the lead to below double figures. Jalen Tyson gets to the rim, and they got the team back into it. And I was really, really giddy, really, really hoping that they would be able to close this one out and complete the comeback. And it felt that push was enough to buy Donovan and Evan, who, again, we're going to talk about in a minute, some rest before entering the final closing minutes of this game with about 6 minutes left in it. And it immediately was rocky right out of the gate as the Cavaliers turned the ball over. But then Spida, much like we know that he has done over the previous couple of years that he's been here, drills back-to-back triples to cut the lead to 4. And at that point, it felt like we had a game until we didn't, right? BI drills a couple of shots he has no business making, followed by an Evan Mobley turnover, of which Kenny Atkinson challenges and loses. He's been on a streak with losing those lately too. And then it just all went to the shitter. It was all for naught. All for naught. Felt as if this team was struggling all night, trying to fight back and battle up the hill. And listen, I'm not somebody who's going to sit up here and act like the sky is falling, but I'm also not going to ignore some of the issues that we have continuously seen with this team, right? You don't have somebody opposite Donovan when Darius is not out there, when DeAndre's not out there, when Max is not healthy right now, when Craig Porter Jr. is not in the game. You need to be able to go to somebody to put the pressure on the defense and get you some rim pressures. You need somebody who can get you a bucket. I think Tyrese Proctor might be able to do that in time. I already talked about Chris Livingston being somebody who can get to the rim, and Evan Mobley should, in theory, be able to do that. But it was ugly, even from Evan, right? I want to say, right, because I have so many of these conversations with people about Evan Mobley's season that he's had. And sure, it's been a disappointing start. It has been a very disappointing start in certain categories. I just released a video today talking about the free throws and how if Evan entering tonight, if he had just made 18 more of the free throws that he's already earned, because he's taken 111 of those entering tonight, he would be at 20 points per game scorer. But right now, if Evan doesn't have somebody setting him up with a good position, and he's not somebody who's going to be able to self-create for himself, well, he's not going to be able to self-create all game long, then his impact is not necessarily nullified, but it definitely goes down. And I think this is where you get to the point where point guard play definitely matters. It definitely matters, as Evan would finish tonight with 14 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, was 5 of 7 from the field. And yeah, there were specific sequences that I enjoyed where he got the ball from Lonzo or somebody else out there and was able to dunk it home. But there were far too many possessions, especially in the second half of this game, more specifically the fourth quarter, in which it just felt like Evan's out on the perimeter. He's trying to initiate a dribble handoff or get a pick and roll set going, and there's just nobody there to fucking execute, right? There was literally possessions in which Luke Travers was out there. And listen, I'm a Luke Travers fan. He's somebody that I feel like could potentially be an NBA caliber player. If he ever develops a three-point shot, that's the swing skill for him. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that, but it got to a point where we're trying to rely on Luke fucking Travers to drive to the ball, to drive to the rim. And he had some. There were some sequences where Luke got to the rim where he, kind of lost his step, but still was able to finish the shot and get to the line. But when you have Evan Mobley looking for anybody to take the ball so that he can cut to the basket and get some easy points, there was just not anything there to be had. They were doubling Donovan. They were tripling Donovan. So that was out, and then nobody else could really offer that dribble penetration. There was nobody really to run pick and roll with. And so what does that leave Mobley to do? You try and put the ball in his hands and ask him to create for himself, drive inside, possession after possession. That's not a recipe for success. It's been hit and miss all season long. He has a career high in utilization rate, and sometimes it looks good. Sometimes he's able to get to the cup, and other times it just looks terrible. There's turnovers involved. One of the turnovers they had in that fourth quarter as the Cavaliers were trying to get back into it, that was brutal. That was a brutal one. And I don't say any of this to signal that I don't believe that Mobley is going to get better than what we have seen, but it's games like this where you really need Mobley to step up some way. But I'm also not oblivious to the fact that this dude should not have to always be reliant on a point guard to set him up. It's hard to watch at times. And when you're relying on Luke Travers, right? I mean, I'm not trying to pick on Luke. When you're relying on Luke Travers, of all people, a two-way player, somebody who has shown some skills that could convert to the NBA level, but others where it's like the three-point shot. The three-point shot is the swing skill for him. He's not a guy that should be out on that court normally, but lo and behold, the Cavaliers have all these guys resting, so he's pressed into action, playing way more minutes than he typically would or should in this case. And you're asking for somebody to help you out in the pick and roll game. You're asking for somebody to help you out and get you in your spots, and it's just not pretty. And so, again, it's not to pick on Luke in particular, but I'm just making a point here. Right. There was literally, it felt like there was nobody out there. And so if you're listening to the show, do you think that I'm picking on Luke or anything like that, or that I'm trying to over exaggerate things? No, you got to go back and watch the game. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It doesn't look pretty at times. I think that at a certain point, you have to be able to understand the personnel that you have available and try to scheme up something else. And for Kenny Atkinson, I don't have the answer. I can't tell you what tonight should have been outside of simply getting the ball into the interior, which is a much more difficult thing than said, right? It's much easier said than done when you don't have guys who can consistently put the ball on the floor. You're playing a lot of lineups that don't specifically mesh well or don't get a lot of time together. And so it was a difficult watch at times. Sorry, I'm sitting here fighting through a cough that I've been holding. Listen, it's brutal. These holiday sicknesses creep up on me every single it feels like every single holiday season of every year. But outside of Evan, you needed Lonzo to really step up. You needed Lonzo to be able to get you more than he was able to give you. I think that at this point in time, right, somebody that I've been I don't know how long I'm gonna last on here, guys. Somebody that should be able to theoretically operate the pick and roll. And I know that he's still trying to develop a chemistry with that of Evan Mobley. I know that he's still trying to develop a chemistry with a lot of these guys, but the pick and roll is something that should consistently be there when Evan or Jarrett is your big. And the inability generally to drive for Lonzo is a big, big issue at times. Yeah, he will make ways and make plays to be able to make himself impactful. And we've seen that in specific games, even when the shot isn't falling. But when you are consistently forced into ugly pull-up jumpers and not like shots that are not in rhythm, it's not going to look good. And that's what they did from a defensive standpoint to Lonzo tonight. They forced him into a lot of shots that he had no business taking. And one of the things entering tonight that I've been telling people is that Lonzo has actually been a better pull-up shooter this season than a catch and shooter. And so prior to tonight, we're living with that. But it still hasn't been efficient. Like, he's shooting sub 40% from the field. That's not great. He's never been a truly efficient player, but the one thing that you could rely on Lonzo in seasons past, especially prior to, the back-to-back seasons that he missed, was at very least the catch and shoot triple. And it's just not there for him right now. And when pressed into the starting lineup and playing 34 minutes, which is not something that I think anybody should ever truly have on their bingo card for Lonzo at this stage of his career, the weaknesses and the glaring issues just get magnified intensely. They really do. And I think you saw that play out in terms of that 3-point shot, right? Where Donovan, clearly the defense is making him work for everything out there. And I don't fault Donovan for too much of tonight, as he's absolutely looking exhausted at times, trying to put the team on his back, not fully excusing him. But when he is drawing doubles and triples out there, somebody's got to step up. A ball handler has to be able to be an outlet for Donovan and Lonzo. There were points where he makes plays. He's clearly trying to get the ball to other guys out there, but you're not going to be able to do too much from an offensive standpoint outside of taking non-existent, out of rhythm triples. Then if you can't get something going, if you can't get somebody else to generate some type of movement out there. And that's why you saw so many out of rhythm shots, especially from Lonzo in particular. And that's really all it boils down to. I thought that Jalen Tyson, he did his best to try and be an outlet for the ball handlers out there. He's been one of the best catch and shooters out there this season. Has been a huge development for this team. Probably a top 3 development for the Cavaliers on the season as a whole has been Jalen Tyson's ability to knock down that 3-point shot and be just a general floor spacer for the ball handlers out there. A good outlet, something that he obviously needed to become. And I appreciate that, but obviously it's just not enough. It just wasn't enough for tonight. Larry Nance Jr. in his 18 minutes and 8 seconds of action. I mean, there's not really a lot that I can say about Larry Nance Jr.'s minutes tonight. I thought that from a defensive standpoint, there were certain sequences in which Toronto got the best of him. And obviously, he's not somebody that should be starting at this point in his career, but he's pressed into action because, lo and behold, you got 5, 6 players out, right? Well, 7, actually. Darius, Jarrett, DeAndre, Craig, Sam, Max, Dean. Those are all rotation caliber pieces. And so when I sit here and I say to myself, or when I talk to you guys about how I'm not putting too much stock into this loss as I would others where the team is healthy, I can't in the state that I'm in, bring a lot of anger to the surface because they're down 7 players. And I was never going to be truly pissed about a loss tonight, but I definitely did not love a lot of what I saw, but it was expected. I'm sorry, it was expected. So I'm not going to sit here. If you want me to go on a tirade, I'm just not going to do it. If that's the type of podcast that you're looking for, probably should go ahead and exit now, and I'm perfectly okay with that. But missing 7 players, I was expecting the process to be okay tonight because, again, Chris Livingston, Travers, right? A lot of these guys are not players that should be playing nearly as much as they played tonight, nor should they be pressed into the starting lineup in the case of Larry Nance Jr. Love you, Larry. It's just the case that the case that we find ourselves in right now. And so if you're being objective, you know what I'm saying is true. And I know that there probably will be Toronto fans that listen to the show or Toronto fans that are in the chat, saying this and saying that, but I'm sorry. I'm good win, I guess. I'm not going to sit here and make a big deal about this one. I'm just going to try and turn the page and take away whatever takeaways that I can from this one and leave it at that, because much of what we saw tonight is not something that we should be seeing all season long in terms of the personnel out there. Something that continues to be a bright spot for me, though, if there are no other bright spots in this game, is Tomlin. That's the real takeaway that I'm taking from this one. It truly is. Tomlin was, again, really, really good in the time that he was allotted tonight. 31 minutes, 52 seconds of action for Tomlin off the bench as he would score 14 points, 4 rebounds, and was 6 of 8 from the field, including 2 of 3 from deep, and just looking incredibly confident out there. So if I'm taking anything away from this game, to me, it's Tomlin. Nae'Qwan Tomlin looks like a rotational level player. And when this team returns to full strength, I don't think it's crazy to assume that Kenny Atkinson will consider him for the back end of that rotation. I understand that he's going to be fighting an uphill battle because there are a lot of players above him that deserve minutes as well, right? You already know your starting 5, assuming health, is locked in. Darius, Donovan, DeAndre Hunter, likely, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen. It's your starting 5. Max Strus, Jalen Tyson, those 2 are locked in. I think that assuming Lonzo's healthy, he will at least begin the playoffs in the rotation. That's 8. And then Sam Merrill, right? Sam Merrill is number 9, or he's in the 9-man unit. I'm not really sure what the actual distribution will be in terms of minutes, or who's the first off the bench in the playoffs for Cleveland. But what I can say is that those 9 probably pretty good as locks for the rotation, assuming they are actually healthy. That 10th man is where things get extremely murky. You get to a point where you have Tomlin, Dean Wade, obviously Larry Nance Jr. still figures in the back end of the rotation, and then Thomas Bryant. These are all players that Kenny Atkinson is going to have to consider on a nightly basis. And that's fine. But the problem with that mentality is that you're not necessarily playing a true third big off the bench if you're going truly like rotational with that 10th spot, right? Because ideally you want a third big out there. You don't want Evan and Jarrett to continuously rotate with the bench, because that's shown to be not a recipe for success or sustainability for this team. I think that you want to have somebody out there that can play big minutes. And when I say big minutes, I'm not necessarily saying like actual like big minutes, like 20 plus minutes per game. I'm saying you want somebody that can play the big position, ideally, whether that be Bryant or Tomlin or somebody else. And that's a difficult question that they'll have to ask themselves. But I don't think anything that we saw tonight really should be a real takeaway for what we could potentially be seeing later on in the season or in the playoffs. This is just a loss. It happens. Say it's copium, whatever, call me a homer, whatever you will. I don't, honestly, I can't put a lot of stock into this one. There were 7 players out. So take what you will from this game. Hopefully the Cavaliers are able to pick up another W when they take the court next, and we'll move from there. But and just to get me out of here before I just start hacking up before the stream ends, I'm just going to hop into the chat real quick, and then I'll leave you guys to it. Reef Gain says, guys are going to have to stop sitting and start playing. Season will be half gone before we know it. Kenny going to have to start sitting guys regardless of how much they get paid. They need to find a bucket getter for the bench. That's a lot, right? That's a lot to really internalize. In terms of the rest of specific players, we know that DeAndre Hunter rested tonight. Everybody else outside of that, I don't know. Craig Porter Jr., could he have played? Could he not have played? I don't know. Sam Merrill, I don't know. He's missed the last couple of games. Jarrett Allen is obviously dealing with the finger. That's one real injury. And then Darius, that's a real tricky thing to manage, especially when he's already had a couple of scares. So I really don't know what we really accomplish by forcing them to play if the goal is to remain healthy to enter the playoffs. Because as of right now, they enter tonight as the 3rd seeded team in the East dealing with all of these injuries. And to me, I've shared the same opinion I've had all season long, and that has not changed even after tonight's loss. Get a top 4 seed, get mostly healthy into the playoffs. That's all I care about. Development also takes precedence here, but as long as they got a top 4 seed, I'm not going to sit here and be bemoaning every single loss that they have. D Jackson H1K says, I'm so disappointed in the Cavs. We couldn't score in the last 3 minutes of the game, and the Raptors capitalized on that. Shaking my head. Yeah, as I mentioned, the Raptors did not shoot insanely well from 3-point distance tonight. They just took advantage of a lot of cold shooting streaks for the Cavaliers in this one. And by the time that they really started to try to cut the lead down, I think they just kind of ran out of gas. And a lot of that was simply Donovan Mitchell chucking up shots and Thomas Bryant hitting a rainbow and, a couple of other things that led to them cutting that lead down, but it was not sustainable. And it was a disappointing loss, but not too much that I can take away, honestly. Jawan Sylvan says, Cavs are fraud, and I don't want to hear who was missing. Unacceptable to get swept by the Raptors. That's certainly your right to that opinion. It sucks that the Cavaliers have lost 3 straight times to the Toronto Raptors, but anytime, I don't think missing 7 players is not nothing. I mean, honestly, you got to take a step back and listen to what you're saying. They were down 7 rotation players. These aren't just regular run-of-the-mill end of bench players. This is 7 rotation players we're talking about. We're talking about multiple starters. Darius Garland, Jarrett Allen, DeAndre Hunter. That's 3 starters right there. Max Strus is technically a starting level wing out there. Sam, he has started multiple games. You get the point. They were down 7 rotational players tonight. I'm not going to, if we truly want to talk about being unacceptable, I just think that's a little bit of an overreaction. Jorge Campo says, Mobley with 5 rebounds total is unacceptable. It seems like every center is having their way with him with the boards. I get it is his role different. I don't know if I'm reading that correctly. I'm sick. I don't know. But it's still unacceptable. There are certain rebounds tonight that I did feel that Evan Mobley, if he would have positioned himself better or tried a little bit hard, he could have gotten to. I will agree with that. I will say that. I think Evan Mobley right now is just kind of out of place. It doesn't feel like they have a real role for him. Kenny is just winging it with Evan Mobley a lot of nights, and a lot of that simply does boil down to non-existent point guard play because Evan is still a big man. He can't self-create every single possession out there, but the rebounding effort is something you can control. The positioning is something you can control if you're Evan Mobley, and it's been hit and miss all season. M4X6969 says, not gonna lie, Longo starting to disappoint. I'm assuming you're referring to Lonzo. I get it. Tonight was not a good Lonzo performance. I'd spent a good amount of time talking about that already. Not gonna really beat a dead horse, but what I will say is tonight was atrocious. He also says defense good, the rest is meh. Yeah, I mean, I think that he's actually, if this is still in reference to Lonzo, as I mentioned, I spent a lot of time talking about Zoe already. If you've heard me in other streams, you know that I still do believe that come the playoff time, if he's healthy, he'll be a playoff riser. But when the shot isn't going in, it's just going to nullify any of the other things that he brings to the table, which is pretty bad. Jawan Silman says that Mitchell is garbage. Were you saying he was garbage yesterday? I mean, I bet you will not. I guarantee you were not. It was a bad game. He just won Eastern Conference Player of the Week, man. Like, we got to be real with ourselves. There's a lot of overreactions going on. I guarantee you were not saying that yesterday. Guarantee it. Fabian Quintero says 7 shot attempts from Mobley. Meanwhile, 15 attempts for Lonzo. It's so pathetic. I swear Evan makes me want to rip my hair off in a game like this. Mobley got to go out and get 40, shaking my head. Are we actually taking into consideration that point guard play does matter? If you're expecting Evan to self-create every single possession out there, I'm sorry. Evan is not that guy. He's just not somebody who's going to – he is not Giannis out there just able to bully his way to the rim. That's just not who he is. That's okay. But at the same time, yeah, you do want to see him be a little bit more involved. But when there's literally nobody to get the ball to him, there's just not much that you can really – not really much you can say. I already pointed out like 15 times, like literally when you're literally trying to hunt DHOs and pick and rolls with the likes of Travers and others because they're shutting down every single – opportunity that Mitchell gets the ball. They're doubling him, they're tripling him, they're making sure the ball just is not touching his hands all that frequently. There's nothing there. So he was never going to get out there and get a 40 ball. That was never going to happen. Never going to happen. Captain Falk says losing 3 times to the Raptors really stinks. It does. It does. That's outside of Tomlin. That's the other takeaway. Just losing always sucks. Brings out the worst in people too. Championship contenders are supposed to win even when players being injured, but it's not the end of the world. I think that there is a fine line here. Like, listen, we're towing it. We're towing it with some of these things that are being said. I'm not pointing to you specifically, but guys, they were down 7 players. It was expected against a Raptors team that it's actually a lot better than people give them credit for. They entered tonight second in the East behind Detroit, if I'm not mistaken. The Raptors are not the same Raptors that they once were. Got to respect it. But again, down 7 players, I'm not taking too much away from this game. If you're criticizing them for resting players, okay, I'll give you that. But they really are dealing with some real injuries here. They really are. It's not the end of the world. Trevor T says, I hate this team. Shaking my head. Why can't we ever have consistent energy? Why do we have to wait till the fourth quarter to play hard? You get paid millions of dollars and can't sustain high energy. I don't get it. Listen, man, again, there was a lot of overreactions. There is a lot of overreactions going on right now. I get it. We're in the heat of the moment right now, but man, take a step back and breathe. Breathe. Just breathe. Coach Rodney Young says, Ivan Mobley is annoying as hell, taking 7 shots the entire game. I already mentioned this. Point guard play matters. You see how big and impactful Evan Mobley can be, especially when Darius Garland's out there. But when nobody's getting in the ball, you're not going to literally. This dude is averaging a career high in utilization this year, and he's still not averaging 20 points per game. Why do you think that is? It's because he's not truly all the way 100% finished product in terms of a self-creator. So to expect Mobley to be out there and just be this juggernaut of a player from an offensive standpoint, it's not likely to happen in games like this where literally there's nobody to deliver you the ball the way that you should. Lonzo, I already spoke about that. He's not a pick and roll guy. He's not a driver of the basketball. There's some entry passes that go on, but defenses can snuff that out. They can adjust too. Like we got to be realistic about what we're saying here in regard to this. Like, yeah, the 7 shot attempts is a direct result at times of people not being able to get him the ball, not being able to put him in the position as a big man. You cannot ask Evan Mobley to self-create every possession that he gets the ball. It's not sustainable for him right now. I'm perfectly fine admitting that. Provided 253 says, can't believe we were even in this game. Again, listen, somebody is speaking with a little bit, just be calm. Down 7 players. It is what it is. This is not the worst loss that they've had by far. Not the worst. BI, he cooked in this one. There was a lot of shots that he should not have made, that they were really good defense played on him. The Cavaliers just could not knock down shit. And there was literally nobody out there that could put pressure on the defense with their dribble penetration. Just nobody. Just nobody. R. Jones says, why is Luke Travers in the league exactly? Well, technically he's not. He's a 2-way player. He has 2-way eligibility, meaning he spends most of his time with the Cleveland Charge. He is a NBA level player because scouts see something in him. And honestly, if you watch his game, you can see some of what that is. He is a pretty decent playmaker at his size, pretty decent rebounder, not the greatest or most skilled ball handler, not necessarily an overall great defender, but the culmination of these things, it does meet the NBA level requirement in a lot of regards. The problem with Travers is that Travers cannot knock down the 3-point shot. Never has truly been able to at the NBA level in the limited opportunities that he has gotten. And that's always been the case with Luke. That's why he's continuously working on it at the G League level. But to answer your question, that's what it is. It's the 3-point shot. That's the swing skill for him. He's in the league because he has other NBA level skills. But in a 3-point shooting league, that's not enough unless you can knock down the shot at a semi-respectable rate. We're talking 36, 37%. Got to be, you honestly have to be able to evaluate some of these things without always jumping to why is this guy in the league. Roving Pursuit says Mobley is an eyesore out there. It doesn't look like he wants to play on the offensive end. It's hit and miss at times. He didn't look like an eyesore last night, but again, this coincides with point guard play. Guess who was out there last night? Darius Garland. It's just a lot of an up and down season for Mobley thus far. I'm not gonna lie, I truly expected a lot more out of this from this start of the season from Evan Mobley. It has been a disappointment, but there have also been things that have been relatively surprising about what he's been able to do. There's a lot of negativity surrounding Mobley right now, and it's totally justified, but there's also some good things. One of the good things that has occurred for Evan, despite missing too many fucking free throws, is the simple fact that he's actually generating a ton of contact. He's averaging basically 2 more free throws this season per game than he was last year. Career high, career best. His on-ball gravity, career high. He's in the 84th percentile in terms of on-ball gravity this year. He's averaging career highs in touches, utilization, points, not points, field goal attempts, 3-point attempts, free throw attempts, all 3 of those categories, averaging career highs in all of these things. And I think that is a positive, but it's being overshadowed by some pretty glaring negatives. And if you're being objective, you know what I'm saying is true. That still doesn't take away from the fact that his start has been disappointing. I expected him to be and to truly look like a bona fide top 10 player this year. Man, he's a top 20 guy for sure, but he has not cemented himself as a top 10 player like a lot of people, including myself, thought that it would be. It's bad, man. It's certainly bad at points, but I think people are being a little bit overreactionary here. Dr. Claw says, hate the back-to-backs early this season. Yeah, and I mean, it really puts a damper on moods around here because it truly brings out the worst in people. It truly does. People love to let the overreactionary takes fly. The energy is just down across the board. You get a lot of rest, a lot of load management, whatever will happen. Cavaliers may or may not get fined. I don't know. But what I can tell you is that I hate all of these early season back-to-backs too. I truly do. Truly do. Trendsetter says, and Nae'Qwan Tomlin always try to guard the best player every time, and he was 2 or 3 from 3. Nae'Qwan, like I said, probably the blown bright spot from this game to me. Outside of, if you want to throw Jalen Tyson in there too, that's fine. But Tomlin was probably the best thing that came from this game. He continues to be impressive from a defensive standpoint, no matter if shots are being made on the other end. He's making guys work. He's giving his all on that end. He finally started knocking down that 3-point shot. He's hit 3 in the last 2 games. Love to see that. But it's definitely the best part of tonight's game. Definitely the best part of tonight's game. Freddie Black says, I felt that they should have left the blowout team in there. Probably. I think that you could make a case for that with Thomas Bryant and others out there contributing to the Cavaliers cutting the lead down. But I got the lead down to 4 with the back-to-back triples from Donovan Mitchell, which we've seen him carry this team time and time again. So it's always kind of a double-edged sword. What could have happened? What would have happened? I think that's fair to ask, though, truly. Trey says, glad the team still kept it close and good to see other players contribute. At least we got some sort of, non-overreaction going on here. Yeah, I mean, they kept it close. It was nice to see some of these guys that are not necessarily in the everyday rotation continue to step up. And Tomlin, very quickly, he has earned himself a role, but it's impossible to say whether or not he'll stay there once the team returns to full strength. So bright spot for him for sure. Peaceful Warrior says, I wouldn't be bad if Mobley took the offseason off. Injuries and burnout were a problem. The season is long enough to do the work during it. I'll be patient on Mobley for now. All I know is that we needed a big offseason of work from Evan Mobley. And clearly he did put on some muscle, but excuse me, the areas in which we wanted to see him improve, we haven't really seen too much of that. Just being honest, the ball handling is still a work in progress. The mid-range shot still needs work. Shot selection admittedly has been wonky, and a lot of that has to do with not having true point guard play out there. So he's starting possessions all farther away from the rim than he probably should. 3-point shot is not falling for him. Charity stripe is not going well for him. The inefficiency is just, it's been ugly to watch. But I'm not gonna shit on him too much, because there are legitimately performances in which Evan Mobley still looks like a top 15 player in the NBA. I just wish that he would have seized this opportunity a bit more. And there's still time, but tonight is probably not going to help the good agendas that we want to push for Mobley. Just a step backwards. But one game. Floyd says, thanks to Nance, Tomlin will get plenty of chances in the rotation. I mean, possibly. I think that if we're talking right now, that Tomlin has obviously outplayed him. I have no problem saying that. But that's a low bar too, as of right now. Larry has been some things out there that he's done, and there's been a lot of things that he hasn't done well too. And so it's a long season. We'll see how many more opportunities that Kenny gives him. But a lot of this is due to necessity too. We don't really know what the rotations will look like when they return to full strength. I mean, that's probably a good place to leave it at as of right now. Yeah, like I always say, guys, if you'd like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier53@gmail.com. YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all that good stuff. If you want to support the show in a small but way, consider becoming a member over on Patreon. You can do so on YouTube too for as little as $1 a month. But even if you don't, you know, your boy will still be making the content, whether I'm sick or healthy, because I love this team, and I know you guys do too. Go Cavs.